everyone, and welcome back to this 4-part series on overcoming self-portrait obstacles. For today's topic, we're going to be focusing on how to kind of overcome your body image issues, or a few of the different ways and methods that I use to not only confront my body image issues through self-portraits, but also use self-portraits as a way to bring me more awareness about what my body image issues are. So the first thing is, when you're taking your self-portraits, you want to take into account the mood that you are in while you're doing it. If you are any sort of variation of stressed out, tired, hungry, or otherwise, you are going to be looking for negative things. It's what happens when our brain is in a stress zone. It's looking for risk everywhere, which means anything negative is going to come to the forefront of our brain. And this means all of the negative thoughts we've ever had about ourselves and our body. One time I had done some self-portraits. I was in a bad state of mind based on my business, how my business was doing and all that stuff. And I remember taking the photos and afterwards looking at them and just crucifying myself. I would say things like, "Oh my God, I look disgusting, that's gross." Instead of deleting the photos, however, I just put them into a folder to be looked at another day. And I kind of just chalked it up to, what a failure of a self-portrait session. A few weeks later, I was asked to provide a headshot for some sort of, publication or something. And all my self-portraits end up in the same folder, including those ones with my headshots. As I was scrolling through the images to find my headshot, I came across the images I had taken 2 weeks prior. And interestingly enough, my thoughts were, "Oh my God, look how cute my tum is. Look how cute I am. I love these photos. Why haven't I shown these to anyone? Or why haven't I shared these?" And that's when I realized that the state of mind or the emotional state that you're in when you view your photos has more to do with the photos themselves. Not only was this information good for me to know for my self-portraits, but it was also helpful for me to know that for my clients. If they come in to view their photos at the reveal and they've had a stressful day, maybe their car got towed that day, maybe they got into an accident on their way to the studio, chances are when they look at the photos, they're going to be more negative towards themselves or more self-critical than they would be if they were in a positive state of mind. So that has allowed me now to say, okay, before we look at the photos, here's a process we're going to go through to regulate your emotions and help get you in more of a positive state of mind. And so I not only apply that to clients, I also do that to myself. I check in with myself and ask myself, how are you feeling before you look at these photos? That way, it removes any sort of personal attachment I have to them, saying like, hey, whatever you think about these right now may change. So that's the very first thing that I recommend. Just pay attention to where you are emotionally before you look at your images. The second thing is using your self-portrait practice as an intentional way to work through your body image issues. And what I mean by that is set aside time to take photos of yourself in various states of dress, different poses, different ways of expressing yourself, and so on, and go into it with the intention and understanding that looking at these is going to make me uncomfortable, but I want to hear what my brain is telling me. Because what happens is your brain is telling you that stuff normally in your day-to-day when you're on autopilot. You just don't recognize it. So self-portraits can become a way for you to become more self-aware of the things that you tell yourself and that might be holding you back in a lot of areas of your life. Once you are aware of what you believe about your body, what you believe about yourself, and so on, then you can actually work to fix it, address it, or whatever you want. But if you're not even aware of what you're saying to yourself, how can you possibly move forward and do something different? You can't. And so I encourage you, when you're going to go and embark upon doing self-portraits, I say, okay, chances are some of these are going to make me feel uncomfortable. Instead of judging myself for having the negative thought, I'm going to simply witness it. I'm going to be aware that I'm having this thought to begin with, and then come back to it in the form of a journal or even just thinking it through and ask myself, where did I learn that? Who taught me that? Is that thought helping me get the outcome that I desire in my life? Is that a thought that I want to keep? More often than not, the things we think about our bodies are not our beliefs to begin with. They're either beliefs that were passed down to us from our caretakers, from our peers, from the media, and so on. And just because other people think those things to be true for them doesn't mean they have to be true for you, particularly if they are things that are getting in the way of you enjoying your life. So you get to decide now, once you're aware of the thought, to say, do I want to keep this thought? Or how can I reshape this thought to better serve the outcome that I desire? After all, thoughts are just thoughts. They are not based in anything. They are literally just thoughts floating out in the air until you decide to attach a feeling to it. So it's up to you to be responsible for the thoughts that you have and not just accepting them as they come through. Be curious about the thoughts that you have, and maybe you'll uncover that these aren't your thoughts to begin with. Alright, so I'm going to include in the description of the video here a few of the questions, just in case you've forgotten, and a few of the practices that I encourage you to do. And these are things that I do for myself when I'm looking at my photos, and I come across ones that are a bit more difficult to embrace, we'll say. Last but not least, I want to touch on the part of, I think it's really important for us to see ourselves, that the fact of the matter is we are not static beings. Yet when we take photos of ourselves, we expect ourselves to adhere to beauty standards in every single photograph. In real life, we are not adhering to beauty standards the whole way through our life, and people still love us, and we are still valuable, and we are still awesome, and we are still successful, and we are still doing all these things, even though we aren't adhering to beauty standards all of the time. And so when we put that expectation that photos should be perfect and we should look perfect and look like we don't have double chins and we don't have tummy rolls and we don't and we look more feminine or less feminine, whatever the thing is, it helps us to remove that pressure from our day-to-day life, to understand that, yeah, sometimes I look like that. I know I can also look like this, but all of these things are just split seconds of my life, and I'm the same person in all of them. Just because my tum looks like this in this photo doesn't mean that it's a bad photo. It just means that it's different than what has been sold to me is a good photo. And so again, you get to decide how much power are you going to let those thoughts have? How much power are you going to let those messages that come across to us have? It's up to you to decide that, you know what, I look like messy in a split second, but I also look perfect in a split second, and I'm the same person either way. It does not detract from my value as a human being. It does not mean I'm undocumentable. It does not mean that I'm not photographable. It does not mean any of that crap that we like to throw around. The reality is you are worthy of being documented, whether that means your body adheres to beauty standards or not, whether you're posing in a way that is flattering, which if you know me, I hate that word, or not, it's still a worthy photograph. And that's something that I hope more people will get on board with, this idea that your whole life is worthy of documenting, not just the perfect moments. I always joke with my husband that when I die, he's got to take all the photos that I've ever taken of myself, like literally all of them, to give people a more well-rounded perspective of who I am most of the time, instead of just who I want them to see. And so that in itself gives you kind of an opportunity to reflect and say, why am I afraid if people see me have a double chin? What does that mean if I do have a double chin? What does it mean if my back roll is showing? What does it mean if I am actually fat? What does it mean if I look slutty? What does it mean with like all these labels that we've accumulated through our life? Who are we trying to impress with these photos? Self-portraits are for you and nobody else. If you want to share them with the world, that is obviously your right to do that, and I do encourage it because it inspires others to do self-portraits. But ultimately, your self-portraits are for you and you alone, which means you don't have to show up as somebody that you're not. You don't have to be the mother. You don't have to be the wife. You don't have to be the father. You don't have to be the partner. You don't have to be the employee, the the caretaker, the whatever label you hold for yourself. You don't have to do that. Especially when it comes to self-portraits, you literally can show up as however you want. And if you hold those tightly to yourself just to remind yourself that you are more than the labels that people have assigned to you, then do that. It is not required that you share your self-portraits with others. So use self-portraits as a practice to become aware of the things that kind of get in your way of just existing as your true authentic self. And if you have a hard time looking at them, share with somebody that you know will not judge you and will provide you with honest feedback and say, hey, yeah, you maybe look uncomfortable in that position. Let's talk about that. Why is that the way that it is? Why do you feel uncomfortable when you look at this? And so on. And the more you see yourself in a bunch of different ways, the easier it is to have more documentation of your life. You're not going to care that if you take a selfie with a friend and you're kind of derpy looking in it and you have 5 chins, or your eyes are closed and your tongue is hanging out, or you look stocky, or whatever the word is. You're not going to care as much because you're going to remember that photographs are only there to document a moment in time. But you can't get used to looking that way in a photograph if you refuse to accept that you do look like that sometimes. And so self-portraits are a great way to help you do that. That is it. So ask yourself questions, get curious, have compassion for yourself, and just accept the fact that you're human and you're constantly moving and changing all of the time.